Okay, so we're going to continue learning the halachos of cleaning clothing on Shabbos. There is a prohibition to clean clothing on Shabbos because, as we went last week, in the Mishkan they would clean the wool and it's prepared to be used in the Mishkan. Whenever was done to prepare the building of the Mishkan is considered one of the things we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Whatever is allowed to do, whatever you were allowed to do, right? Whatever you needed to do to build a Mishkan is forbidden to do on Shabbos. That's you're not allowed to wash clothing on Shabbos. But there are many things which are similar to washing clothing, but not exactly washing clothing, and they're also forbidden. And there are some things which are very slight differences, and they are permissible. And it's really hard to know what is what without learning intricately all the halachas. Rabbi Farkash, who is a world-renowned authority in the laws of Shabbos, he just completed his fourth book in laws of Shabbos, and he said this book took him 7 years to write. And this book is all about cleaning clothing on Shabbos. So we got up to last week. Specifically, we got up to last week about discussing drying yourself with a towel. You dry yourself with a towel, so you're causing the towel to become wet. So it's only a problem. It would be a problem only if the towel is dirty. The towel is a clean towel, so they're not cleaning the towel by drying off your body in a towel, and so therefore. Yeah, see, it's not a good idea, but if you have no other choice, you're allowed to use it. It's true. You're not supposed to use clothing to dry yourself. It says it causes you to forget things. That's true. Okay. Even if the garment is, oh, you're over there. Sorry about that. Dry yourself. Well, let's say you're at you and I remember Union Mikveh in Crown Heights, right? Union Mikveh. Union, yes, you do. You're a Union Mikveh. Union in Kingston. There was a mikveh there where you were at many times. I'm sure you were at. And this mikveh was legendary for not having enough towels and among other things. So you come there on Shabbos morning, and there was a towel that was used several times, and another towel. So there's a problem with using that towel on Shabbos. Or let's say, not even getting such an extreme example. Let's say you're washing for bread, and it's in shul, and everyone's using the same towel. So although there's no there's no issue necessarily with getting the towel wet, but there is an issue of squeezing. There's two parts of the prohibition of washing on Shabbos. One is to clean the garment, to soak the garment in water. And the other issue is squeezing the garment out from the dirty water that got soaked into it is also a prohibition. This absorbing the water is a prohibition and squeezing it out. So you're not allowed to use a wet, overly wet towel because it's going to squeeze it out. Let's say you have a towel that was wet before Shabbos, and it dried up now. So I allowed to, now it dried up. So the Alter says, interesting halacha on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to wash on Yom Kippur, but you are allowed to take a towel which is moist, not too moist that will make you wet enough. It's called in halacha tefech masat tefech, to make something so wet that it will cause something else to become wet. So you have a towel which is not so wet that it'll cause something else to become wet, and therefore there's no prohibition from the perspective of the laws of Yom Kippur of washing yourself. You want to wake up in the morning, you want to just refresh yourself and have a towel that's moist on Yom Kippur morning. So it's not washing because it's not so wet. The Alter Rebbe says you still shouldn't do that. Why not? Because although right now the towel isn't fully wet, not soaking wet, but since it was soaking wet, we're afraid that maybe you'll use a towel before it gets dry enough for you to use it on Yom Kippur. Okay. There is a certain kind of garment that has different status than all other garments. The garment is a beged shachar chodesh shemakbid olav. Halacha talks about a brand new black garment that you are very careful about. Like, for example, Rabbi Ira is going to buy a kapata tomorrow, and he's going to have his working kapata for the first time. So it's going to be a beged shachar chodesh shemakbid olav. It's a brand new. If you had kapatas before, you wouldn't be so careful about it. It's a brand new kapata. You never had a kapata before. So it's a beged shachar chodesh shemakbid olav. So halacha says that this garment has a different status than other garments. Ordinarily, it's only considered a problem to remove water from something if you're squeezing it out. You're squeezing it, and you have a napkin. It's a brand new black article of clothing. You care about it so much, so the status, the category, the classification of libun, of washing, is different than a regular garment. In this garment, we say that slightly cleaning it is already considered in the category of libun. And therefore, you're not allowed to shake it out from the little bit of water that's on it.
What you can do, you can just lay it down and that's it.
We're going to talk about laying it down in a second. Very good. What about if you don't care about it so much, or you're not sure if you care about it so much? So halacha is, if you don't care about it so much, you're not sure you care about it so much, and you want to be lenient, you can rely on, Alter Rebbe says there's someone to rely on. You do not have to assume that you are OCD about it if you're not, and it's okay. It's okay to shake off a little bit of dirt from it, as we'll discuss soon. Different kinds of dirt. If it's a black garment that you care about and it's new, it's a black garment, you care about it and it's new, and you want to slightly shake it off, it's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. Other garments would not be a problem. But that garment specifically, we see since you're so careful about it, so the slightest change in it is considered like washing. What is the category of new? So there are opinions which say that new refers to a garment which hasn't been washed yet, but the conclusion is that even if it has been washed, if it's still fairly new, it's considered new. Some people say all black garments are a problem, but the conclusion is that most places can say that you don't have to be careful of all black garments, just if it's a new black garment. But if someone wants to be strict about all black garments, Tavila Bracha, there is a blessing for that. What about other colors, other color garments? You have a beautiful blue shirt and you care about it. So there's no reason, according to our sheet of Alter Rebbe, to worry about, you have to be concerned about it. Only if it's black and you care about it, then there would be room to be concerned about it. What if you have snow on your garments? So forget about the black garment. There's even any garment. There is a problem to cause something. You're not allowed to wash any garment. So regarding snow, if you're allowed to shake it off lightly, and if you have a raincoat and it's made out of material, you're also allowed to shake off the raincoat as well. You're not allowed to shake it very, very strongly, because you're also going to get when you shake it strongly, what's been absorbed deep in the garment is also going to be shaken out. And therefore, if you have a raincoat which is made out of a regular material, you're allowed to shake it out, but you're not allowed to shake it strongly. So and if it's made out of plastic, so plastic doesn't absorb, you're allowed to shake it out strongly, no problem at all. There are three categories. A brand new garment, which is black, that you care about, you can't shake it at all. If it's a garment which is made out of material that you're allowed to shake it, but not shake it strongly. They can't get what you could shake out with the outside of it. You can't shake it enough to shake out what's been absorbed. And if it's made out of plastic, a plastic raincoat, you let it shake it strongly because nothing absorbed in the first place. What about a hat? So a hat is the same status as a regular garment. You let it shake it, but not too strongly. Unless it's a brand new black hat. It's a brand new black hat. That would be an example. Some people are very careful about it, especially because of the rain. Because as any hat store salesman will tell you, how long can a hat last? Depends how many rains you take it through. Okay.
Can you put a cover on a hat and stop us?
Okay, very good question.
That's like a tender.
Okay. So putting a cover on a hat has a couple of issues. One of the issues discussed in the Shulchan Aruch is that you're carrying it. It's not considered a garment. It's just used. It's a garment for the garment. So it's not considered a regular garment, and therefore it's a problem of carrying it out. However, the reason why people do this, very religious people do this, because what they do is that they have these plastic covers for the hat, it also cover your neck, cover other parts of your body as well, and therefore it's not considered solely a cover for the hat. It's considered a cover for something else, other things as well. But there's no issue of it being a tent on your head, on your hat. Go ahead.
You're saying if you brush up, for example, against the dirty wall, black jacket, and do that to get the dust off?
Okay. So we're gonna get to the dust on the black jackets. Everything goes step by step. Every halacha has so many different details. Believe it or not, you just asked is a very complicated halacha, very complicated. So many different facets to this question. But we're Yidden and we have neshamas. And the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that you think that doesn't matter. Alter Rebbe says the kedusha of Shabbos rests on you, even if you're not knowledgeable about it. So the slightest thing matters. Okay, moving right along. Let's say you have a talus which has gotten wet and you want to now put it out to dry it out. So you're not allowed to put it outside in the sun. You also not to put it inside it so that the wind shouldn't dry it out. If it's right before Shabbos or right after sunset, so there's room to be lenient to put out this garment so if you need it very much to put it out to dry it out. But at least you should try to dry it out in a way that's not so noticeable. But bottom line, on Shabbos, to put something out to dry is not a simple thing at all. If there is a nylon garment, nylon and leather, we learned last week, are garments which you're allowed to soak. Usually garments are not allowed to soak, but if made out of nylon, you're allowed to soak. Whenever you let to soak, you're also allowed to dry out. Whatever is permissible to soak, you're also allowed to put it out to dry. But a garment you're not allowed to soak, you're not allowed to dry out either. Okay, let's say you made a mistake and you put out a garment on Shabbos to dry. You don't have to take it down. What if you have a garment that's been on a clothesline on Shabbos? You let to take it down. So even though it was wet when Shabbos came in, according to the B'Shem Zalman Auerbach, you're allowed to take it down on Shabbos. Although halacha says you're allowed to move around a wet garment on Shabbos because it's considered muktzah, he says that only to move it around, but to wear it, he says it's okay. Shlomo Zalman says even though the halacha talks about figs that were put out to dry on Shabbos if they have a category of muktzah, and therefore many people have the opinion that say clothes which put out to dry should be the same category. Shlomo Zalman, who was one very prominent pasuk, he says you're allowed to take it off a clothesline on Shabbos. I don't know why Rabbi Farkash doesn't talk about a dryer on Shabbos. It would seem a dryer is the same kind of thing. If the dryer is running on Shabbos, it would seem the same kind of thing. But I have to look into why he doesn't mention a dryer specifically. It would seem he does say about a dryer that I like to put your clothing into a dryer on Shabbos. So it depends, or the washing machine on Shabbos. If you usually store your clothing in the washing machine until you clean them, and that's just a place to store your dirty clothing, that's fine. But if you're putting them there in order to be able to wash them more quickly after Shabbos, specifically, you can't put them into the washing machine. But if you always put them in the washing machine, that's where you store some people have a hamper and they put the dirty clothing in the hamper. But some other people, especially people that's living by themselves, whatever, they don't have so much dirty clothing, they just put their dirty clothing directly in the washing machine until they're ready to make a wash. So you're allowed on Shabbos, if that's your scenario, to put them into the washing machine on Shabbos.
If you have a lady that she comes every week to clean your house on Shabbos,
Yeah.
and You don't tell her anything because she knows everything that she has to do without
Yeah.
questioning. Is it okay for her to do it?
Let's ask the question differently. Are you allowed to allow your non-Jewish cleaner to set your table on Shabbos for a party you're having after Shabbos? Or you have to stop her? So it's not so simple. Really, you're not allowed to prepare for after Shabbos. You shouldn't allow your non-Jewish cleaner to prepare for after Shabbos either. There are different scenarios which would be more lenient if it's for the sake of a community. Like we had a scenario over here a few years ago regarding some Chostera. We wanted to prepare for setting up the shul for the Chostera on the first day of Yontif. You know, prepare for one day of Yontif and the second day of Yontif. And the conclusion was that since it's for the sake of a community, and this gentleman who was setting up would also partake of the meal, meaning the guy who wasn't Jewish, so that was for that scenario it was okay. But ordinarily, just like you can't prepare for after Shabbos, you shouldn't have your cleaner prepare for after Shabbos either. What if you're wet on Shabbos, with your clothing is wet? Oh, so I want to say something else. The door of a washing machine, the door of a dryer, the door itself is considered like a klish malachtel isra, not considered muktzah, which means you got to move it for whatever, for if you need to. If you need to put something, let's say the scenario I just gave, you got to put the clothing into the washing machine, but you're not preparing for after Shabbos. That's just a place to store it. You got to lift up the washing machine cover because that's called moving l'tzerich gufa. You got to move something which is not completely muktzah, something which has some functionality, has a function on Shabbos. You got to move it for a use that you need. So you need to put the clothing away in the washing machine. You got to pick up the washing machine cover and put the clothing in there in the scenario that we mentioned. Now, if you are wet, you want to stand outside in the sun, that's okay. What do you want to sit on the radiator? And you want to sit on the radiator, there's a problem. Problem is a couple of problems. And problem number one is that the water which is on you is going to cook. Now, halacha is that cooking on Shabbos, you're not allowed to put something close enough to the fire that even though it's right now not going to cook, let's say, for example, you have a tray of brownies and they're frozen, and you want to have a brownie, and you know the brownie is going to warm up much more quickly. You put the tray of brownies on top of the chont. So you want to put the tray of brownies on the chont so that it will warm up. And so you don't want to cook the brownies, just want it to be warm enough so that you can have a brownie. But if you leave the brownies in the chont long enough, so the vapor that's on the brownie is going to cook because the chont is hot. So you can't put it there for 10 minutes because you're planning to take it off before it cooks. Because we're afraid if you put it there at all, you might end up leaving it there. So in a similar way, you're not allowed to sit on the radiator, even for a few. Even though we're not assuming you're gonna burn yourself with your clothing. You're not gonna sit on the radiator until you burn yourself. But still, it has the same status, and therefore you can't sit on the radiator or stand next to the radiator if it's a scenario where after a long time it will cause the water to heat up and get so hot that would burn. That would burn. A dirty garment is actually better in regards to putting it out to dry. Why? What's the whole problem putting something out to dry on Shabbos? The problem is it looks like you just washed it. The issue of putting something out dry is that if someone sees you putting it out to dry, they may suspect that you washed it on Shabbos. But if the garment is dirty, so you can tell it wasn't washed on Shabbos, and therefore you let it put it out to dry on Shabbos. For whatever reason you need to dry it on Shabbos, you're allowed to because it doesn't look like you had just washed it. Let's just do a few more halachos and we'll let you guys go. All right. There is a scenario that perhaps there would be allowance for someone to stand next to a radiator on Shabbos. Let's say someone is a chayla, he's sick, or he could get sick. Let's say he went to Hadich for Shabbos, be by the Alter Rebbe. He went to the mikveh over there in Hadich on Shabbos, and it's freezing over there in Russia, and he goes back into the shul there, and he had nothing else to wear because his clothing is by his own whatever. So there he is in this category perhaps of a chayla, someone who's sick, and he's not interested in the water heating up. He just wants to heat up his body. So it's called Synchronization. It's called something for sure will happen. The water may for sure heat up, but he doesn't want it to heat up. And the halacha is for a chayil, someone who's sick, you're allowed to do a malacha which means you're allowed to do something which you have no intent in the benefit of the thing itself that you're doing. You have no interest in the water heating up. You're doing malacha, but you don't have interest in the water heating up. You just have an interest in being warmer. So a malacha which you have no need for the malacha itself, and it just happens automatically by what you're doing. I don't want it to happen, and you're in a category of someone who's sick. So then there will be room to be lenient. But as long as you're not going to get so hot, it's okay. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you send out over a heater on your house. I mean, maybe my heater is a lousy heater, but my water will never get so hot. If I send it for all day, it's not going to get boiling hot. That it's going to boil. If it will not boil, then it's okay. Okay. Just address your question. Not to go to sleep with a question. You're allowed to remove feathers from your clothing. It's not considered attached. You're allowed to take a seed off your clothing. According to Mishnah Berurah, you're not allowed to. If it's in brand new black a garment, even a seed, according to Mishnah Berurah, is a problem. According to Rebbe, it's not a problem. If you have a strand, a string that's attached to your clothing, it's also not a problem. What if your garment hasn't been there's something you could do to your garment to make it a little nicer? Let's say the what's it called, the basting stitch that's used to begin to sew a garment, and sometimes they forget to take it off. You're not allowed to take it off on Shabbos. Biblically, it's an awesome in Torah because it's called makbeh patish, the final hammer's blow in completing the garment. Or if there's a little strand in your suit, it's a big deal. It's a tiny little strand. But there's a biblical prohibition taking off a strand on Shabbos because you're concluding the malacha. It's called the final hammer's blow in doing that. So that's a problem. Okay. There's a difference between cleaning off a stain versus cleaning off or cleaning off dust. And the bottom line, it seems, is that you're allowed to lightly dust things off, but to rub would be a problem. And to rub according to the Alter Rebbe, we're not concerned that some places can have a problem in a scenario where you're going to return the garment to its pristine state. They say you can clean it off as long as it's a little bit dirty. But according to the Alter Rebbe, there's no issue of it becoming completely clean. The issue only is if you're going to rub it in a way that you're also getting that which is deep in it to come out. If you're rubbing it together, the rubbing the garment together, that will be a problem. If it's dry dirt, there's another issue. The other issue with dry dirt that's attached to your garment is that if you take dry dirt and you take it off the garment, you're breaking it in tiny pieces, and that's a prohibition of grinding on Shabbos. And therefore, you're not. But there are scenarios where it's not a case of grinding. Like for example, something's been ground already. So the halacha is once something's become ground, it cannot become ground again. There's no prohibition of grinding something which has been ground already. But it's on your garment, and you want to take it off. So the halacha is, if it's no prohibition of grinding, so then you're allowed to take it off, and you're allowed to dust it off. But regarding rubbing it with both sides of the garment, that is not so simple, and it depends on what the scenario is. In some scenarios, we'll get to mitzvah next week, when that is permissible, not permissible, if it's a stain or if it's dust. But bottom line is, if it is to dust something off lightly is okay, unless it's a brand new black garment that you care about, then it's not okay. It's a biblical prohibition according to some opinions. But if it's not a brand new black garment that you care about, then as long as you're dusting it off, it's okay. But if you're rubbing it, there are some issues. Lightly dusting it with your hand is okay. Okay, I'll stop here. Allah Kabaruch.